I had spent the entire afternoon getting ready, as if the simple act of preparation could somehow guarantee a different ending to my story. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my small apartment bedroom, smoothing the red dress I'd bought on impulse last winter and never worn. The fabric was soft against my skin, the color rich and festive, the kind of red that made people turn their heads. I told myself it was armor. I told myself tonight could be different. I applied mascara carefully, not too much, just enough to make my eyes look brighter, less tired. I practiced my smile in the mirror until it looked natural, the kind of smile that said I was fine being here alone, but not lonely. I even spritzed a little of the vanilla perfume I usually save for special occasions. Tonight felt special, or at least I wanted it to. It was Christmas Eve. Who wants to be alone on Christmas Eve? The drive to Evergreen Lounge took longer than I expected because of the snow. Big soft flakes drifted across the windshield like they had all the time in the world. The streets were quiet, most people already gathered around dinner tables or fireplaces. I parked a block away so I could walk the last stretch and feel the cold air on my cheeks. It made me feel alive. Inside the restaurant, the warmth hit me immediately. Golden light spilled from every corner. Christmas music. Soft jazz versions of White Christmas and Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas floated through the air. Tables were filled with couples clinking champagne flutes, families laughing over plates of roast turkey and cranberry sauce, children in tiny holiday outfits staring wide-eyed at the towering Christmas tree near the bar. The smell of pine and cinnamon wrapped around me like a hug I hadn't earned. I gave the hostess my name, Noelle Harper, and she led me to a small table near the window. "Your party hasn't arrived yet," she said kindly. "Would you like to wait here?" I nodded and sat down, folding my hands in my lap so no one would see them tremble. I was early. 10 minutes early. That was intentional. I wanted to be settled, calm-ready. I ordered a glass of sparkling water with lemon and watched the snow fall outside the glass. Every time the door opened, my heart lifted a little, then sank again when it wasn't him. 10 minutes passed, 20, 30. I checked my phone under the table screen, dimmed so no one would notice. No messages, no missed calls. Just the same lock screen photo of me and my sister from last summer, both of us laughing on a beach I hadn't been back to since. 45 minutes. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, not from embarrassment exactly, but from the slow burning realization that I had been left. Again. Then the message came. A single line from Jared, the man my friend Diane had sworn was perfect for me. "Didn't realize you were serious about this. My mom made me go. Merry Christmas." I stared at the words until they blurred. It wasn't just rejection. It was dismissal. As if the evening I had built up in my mind, the hope I had allowed myself to feel, was nothing more than a childish whim. As if I had been foolish to believe someone might actually want to sit across from me on Christmas Eve and talk. I set the phone face down on the table. My fingers curled into the linen napkin until my knuckles turned white. 2 years ago, on a different Christmas, my ex-fiancé, had looked me in the eye and said the words that still echoed in quiet moments, "I want kids, Noelle, and you can't give me that." He didn't say it cruelly. He said it like a fact, like weather, like something unavoidable. I had spent months after that convincing myself I was better off alone. I built walls. I smiled at weddings and baby showers. I told people I was focusing on myself. I even started to believe it, but walls don't keep out loneliness. They just make the silence louder. The waiter approached, his voice gentle. "Would you like to wait a bit longer, ma'am?" I looked up at him, young, maybe 25, wearing a red bow tie for the holiday, and felt a sudden ridiculous urge to tell him everything. Instead, I shook my head. "No," I said quietly. "Just bring me the check, please." He nodded and walked away. Outside the window, the snow was falling harder now, blanketing the street in white. Couples hurried past under shared umbrellas, laughing. A family with 2 little girls in matching coats stopped to press their faces against the glass, waving at the Christmas tree inside. I watched them until they disappeared around the corner. I felt invisible. Not in the poetic way. In the real, aching way. The way that makes you wonder if anyone would notice if you simply stopped showing up. I reached for my purse, ready to leave, when a small voice spoke from behind me. "Excuse me." "Miss." I turned. A little girl stood there, 6, maybe 7, wearing a cream-colored wool dress and a red knit hat with a white pom-pom. She was clutching a stuffed rabbit almost as big as she was. Her brown curls spilled out from under the hat, and her eyes were wide and serious. "Are you sad?" she asked. I blinked. "Because you look like how Mommy used to look when she missed Grandpa." My throat closed. No one had asked me that, not in months. Not ever really. Adults don't ask those questions. They assume, they change the subject, they look away. The little girl tilted her head, waiting. I tried to smile, but it wobbled. I'm okay," I managed. She frowned like she didn't quite believe me. Then she took one step closer and held out her arms. "Would you like a hug?" I stared at her outstretched hands, small chubby fingernails painted bright pink, and something inside me cracked open. I nodded before I could think better of it. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. The hug was clumsy, enthusiastic, the way only children hug. Her rabbit pressed against my side. She smelled like vanilla and snow. And just like that, I started to cry. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet tears that slipped down my cheeks and soaked into her hat. "Daddy says hugs fix everything," she whispered against my shoulder. I think he's right. I couldn't speak. I just held her a little tighter. Footsteps approached quickly. "Clemmy, oh my God, you can't just run off like that." A man's voice, warm but worried. He stopped when he saw us. I looked up, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark wool coat dusted with snow. His brown eyes were kind, but right now they were wide with apology. His hair was dark and slightly messy from the wind. "I'm so sorry," he said. "She's very generous with affection." Clemmy pulled back just enough to look at him. "Daddy, she was sad. I had to hug her." He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I see that." Then he looked at me, really looked, and something softened in his expression. "I'm Garrett," he said quietly. "And this is Clemmy." "Noelle," I whispered. Clemmy tugged on my sleeve. "Can she sit with us, Daddy? No one should be alone on Christmas." Garrett hesitated, glancing at my empty table. The untouched glass of sparkling water, the napkin crumpled in my lap. He looked back at me. "Only if you want to," he said. "No pressure." I looked around the restaurant at the families, the laughter, the lights reflecting off champagne flutes. Then I looked at Clemmy, still holding my hand, and at Garrett, who didn't look away. I took a breath. "I'd love to." I said yes before I could second-guess myself. Garrett gave a small, relieved nod and gestured toward a table near the back of the restaurant, closer to the fireplace, where the light was warmer and the noise felt softer. Clemmy kept hold of my hand the entire way, her tiny fingers wrapped tightly around mine like she was afraid I might disappear if she let go. The table was set for 2, but the waiter appeared almost immediately with an extra chair. He didn't ask questions, just smiled and added a third-place setting. Clemmy climbed onto her booster seat with practiced ease and patted the empty spot beside her. "You sit here," she instructed me, "so I can show you my rabbit." I sat. Garrett took the chair across from me, shrugging out of his coat and hanging it on the back of his seat. Underneath, he wore a simple dark sweater and a faint trace of sawdust clung to one sleeve. Carpenter, I thought. Or maybe something with wood. His hands were callous, the kind that spoke of honest work. Clemmy thrust the stuffed rabbit toward me. "This is Mr. Flop. He's very brave. He used to be scared of thunder, but Daddy taught him not to be." I took the rabbit gently. "He looks very brave." "He is," she said solemnly. "He protects me when I have bad dreams." Garrett watched us with quiet amusement, but there was something else in his eyes, something watchful, almost protective. Not of her, of me. The waiter returned with menus. Welcome back, Mr. Ellis. The usual for Clemmy. Garrett nodded. Mac and cheese, please. Extra cheese and whatever she'd like. He glanced at me. I opened the menu, but the word swam. I wasn't hungry. Not really. But I pointed to the first thing that looked comforting. Grilled cheese and tomato soup, I said softly. Garrett raised an eyebrow. Classic. Clemmy leaned toward me conspiratorially. Daddy makes the best grilled cheese. He puts butter on the outside so it's all crispy. But sometimes he burns it and then we eat it anyway, because it's still yummy. Garrett chuckled a low, warm sound that surprised me. I've improved. Mostly. I smiled despite myself. I believe you. The food arrived quickly. Clemmy's mac and cheese came in a little cast-iron dish shaped like a snowman. She dove in with enthusiasm, cheese stretching in long strings. Garrett cut her bites into smaller pieces without thinking the way parents do when they've done it 1,000 times. I watched them. There was an ease between them, a rhythm that spoke of years of mornings and bedtimes and everything in between. But there was also a quiet absence. No mother reaching over to wipe sauce from Clemmy's chin. No second voice teasing Garrett about his cooking. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. Clemmy finished her first bite and turned to me. Do you have a mommy or a daddy? The question was so innocent it caught me off guard. I have a mom, I said. She lives in Florida now. And a sister. They're busy. Clemmy nodded like that made perfect sense. My mommy is in heaven. She watches me from the stars. Daddy says she's the brightest one. My chest tightened. Garrett's fork paused halfway to his mouth. He looked at me, then at Clemmy, then back at his plate. She's right, he said quietly. Rachel's the brightest, I swallowed. I'm sorry. He shook his head once. Don't be. It's been 3 years. We're okay? Clemmy reached over and patted my hand. It's okay to be sad sometimes. Daddy says it's part of loving big. I looked down at her small hand on mine. So matter of fact, so certain. I think your daddy is very wise, I said. Garrett met my eyes across the table. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Clemmy broke the silence by shoving her drawing toward me, a crayon sketch of a reindeer with an enormous red nose. This is for you, she said, because you have Christmas eyes. I took the paper carefully as if it were made of glass. Thank you, Clemmy. It's beautiful, she beamed. We ate slowly after that. Clemmy told stories about the time she tried to teach Mr. Flop to swim in the bathtub and flooded the bathroom, about how she was going to be an astronaut and a ballerina when she grew up, about the song she was singing solo in the school holiday concert. Garrett listened with quiet pride, occasionally adding a detail or correcting a wild exaggeration with gentle humor. I found myself laughing, real laughter, the kind that surprises you because you forgot you still knew how. When Clemmy's eyelids started to droop, Garrett glanced at his watch. We should get you home, Captain Hart, Clemmy pouted, but didn't argue. She slid off her chair and came around to my side, wrapping her arms around me again. You're not sad anymore, right? I hugged her back. Not anymore. She pulled away and looked up at me with those big, serious eyes. Good, because Daddy says hugs fix everything. Garrett stood lifting Clemmy into his arms. She nestled against his shoulder, already half asleep. He looked at me. Thank you, he said, for saying yes. I stood too suddenly aware of how close we were standing. Thank you, I answered. For asking. He hesitated, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small card, his business card simple with his name number and Ellis Woodworks underneath. In case you ever need a hug and Clemmy's not around, he said, half joking, half serious. I took it. Clemmy mumbled something sleepy against his neck. Garrett smiled a real smile, this time small but genuine. Merry Christmas, Noel. Merry Christmas, I whispered. They walked toward the door, Garrett carrying Clemmy, her head on his shoulder, the reindeer drawing still clutched in my hand. I watched them go. Then I looked down at the table. My half-eaten grilled cheese, the empty soup bowl, the extra place setting that had somehow made all the difference. Outside, the snow was still falling, but for the first time in a long time, the cold didn't feel quite so sharp. The moment we moved to the new table, everything changed. Not in a loud, dramatic way, not with fireworks or sudden declarations, just quietly, gently, the way snow settles on branches when no one is watching. Clemmy insisted on sitting between us. She dragged her booster seat over, climbed up, and immediately began arranging her napkin like it was a very important piece of art. Garrett watched her with the softest smile I'd ever seen on a grown man. Then he looked at me, really looked, and asked the simplest question in the world. What do you usually order when you're having a bad night? I blinked. No one had ever asked me that before. Grilled cheese, I said after a second, and tomato soup. It's stupidly comforting. His smile grew just a little. Not stupid at all. He waved the waiter over and ordered for Clemmy first mac and cheese with extra cheese and the little snowman dish she loved. Then he looked at me. Grilled cheese and tomato soup for the lady, he said. And I'll have the same. Clemmy clapped her hands. We're matching. We were. The food came fast, steaming and golden. Clemmy dove into her mac and cheese like it was her personal mission in life. Cheese stretched in long, glorious strings. She giggled every time one landed on her chin. Garrett cut her bites into perfect little squares without even thinking about it. The motion was so automatic, so tender, it made something in my chest ache in the best possible way. Then Clemmy turned to me, eyes sparkling. Do you know the song I'm singing at the holiday concert? I don't, I said, but I'd love to hear about it. She sat up straighter, puffed out her chest, and sang the first verse of Let It Snow in the sweetest, most earnest voice I'd ever heard. She was slightly off key. She didn't care. Neither did I. When she finished, she looked at me expectantly. I clapped quietly because we were in a restaurant, but with all the enthusiasm I could manage. That was beautiful, Clemmy. She beamed like I'd just handed her the moon. Garrett leaned back in his chair, watching us with quiet pride. She's been practicing every night, he said. Even makes Mr. Flop sit in the front row for rehearsals. Clemmy nodded solemnly. He's my toughest critic. I laughed real surprised laughter that bubbled up before I could catch it. Garrett's eyes met mine over Clemmy's head. The look he gave me wasn't flirtatious. It wasn't calculating. It was just grateful. Like he was thankful someone else got to see how wonderful his daughter was. I felt the same way about the two of them. Clemmy started telling stories, then wild, wonderful 6-year-old stories. About the time she tried to teach Mr. Flop to swim in the bathtub and flooded the bathroom. About how the neighbor's cat always hides in the oven when it's cold. About how she was going to be an astronaut and a ballerina, and maybe a veterinarian when she grew up. Garrett listened to every word like it was the most important thing he'd ever heard. Then quietly he started adding his own stories. Remember when I tried to make cupcakes for your birthday? He asked Clemmy. She groaned dramatically. You burned them. The whole kitchen smelled like burned sugar for 3 days. He laughed low, warm, self-deprecating. I did. And then I tried to fix it by frosting them anyway. They looked like little hockey pucks. Clemmy turned to me. They tasted like charcoal, but I ate 2 anyway because Daddy looked so sad. I couldn't help smiling. That's true love. Garrett shrugged, but his eyes were soft. Sometimes love tastes like charcoal. You eat it anyway. Something about the way he said it made my throat tighten. I looked down at my plate. The grilled cheese was perfect crisp edges, melty cheddar tomato soup, bright and warm. I took a bite and closed my eyes for a second. When I opened them again, Garrett was watching me. Good, he asked quietly. Perfect, I said. Clemmy suddenly pushed a piece of paper toward me, a crayon drawing of a reindeer with an enormous red nose. This is for you, she said, because you have Christmas eyes. I took it carefully like it was made of glass. Thank you, Clemmy. It's beautiful. She smiled so wide I thought her face might split in 2. Garrett called the waiter over again. One more thing, he said. Chocolate cake. For her. He nodded toward me. Not because she needs it, because she deserves it. My breath caught. I started to protest, but he shook his head once, gentle but firm. Let her spoil you a little, he said quietly. It's Christmas. The cake arrived rich dark with a single candle that Clemmy insisted on lighting. Make a wish, she said. I looked at them. Garrett's steady gaze, Clemmy's shining eyes, and felt something loosen inside my chest. I didn't wish for anything big. I just wished to remember this feeling. I blew out the candle. Clemmy cheered like I'd won the Olympics. We finished the cake slowly. Clemmy's eyelids started to droop. She leaned against my arm, yawning hugely. Garrett glanced at his watch. We should get this one home. Clemmy pouted but didn't fight it. Garrett stood and lifted her into his arms. She nestled against his shoulder, immediately half asleep. He looked down at me. "Thank you," he said, "for saying yes." I stood too. "Thank you," I answered, "for asking." He hesitated, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small card, his business card. "In case you ever need a hug and Clemmy's not around," he said, half joking, half serious. I took it. Clemmy mumbled something sleepy against his neck. Garrett smiled a real smile, small but so genuine, it made my chest ache. "Merry Christmas, Noel." "Merry Christmas," I whispered. They walked toward the door, Garrett carrying Clemmy, her head on his shoulder, the reindeer drawing still clutched in my hand. I watched them go. Then I sat back down for just a moment. My plate was empty. The candle smoke still curled in the air. The restaurant was still full of laughter and music and light. But for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel like I was watching it all from the outside. I felt like I had been inside, even if just for one meal. The days after Christmas blurred into a quiet haze of snow and routine. I went back to work at the bookstore, stacking holiday returns and helping customers find last-minute gifts they'd forgotten. But something had shifted inside me. The card Garrett had given me sat on my kitchen counter for 2 days before I picked it up and typed his number into my phone. I didn't text him right away. I stared at the blank message screen for another day, wondering what to say. "Thank you. It was nice to meet you." In the end, I kept it simple. "Hi, it's Noel. Thank you for Christmas Eve. Clemmy's drawing is on my fridge." His reply came almost immediately. "Hi. She's been asking about you," said Mr. Flop misses his new friend. I smiled at my phone like an idiot. We didn't rush into anything. There were no grand dates or declarations. Instead, it was small things, little anchors in my days that made the world feel less empty. A text at 9 a.m. "You okay this morning?" "Snow's heavy out there," I'd reply. "Fine. Just slipping on the sidewalk like everyone else." Then one evening after a long shift, I found a to-go cup of hot chocolate waiting on my doorstep. Attached was a sticky note. "Clemmy says it's magic." Gee. I drank it slowly, letting the warmth spread through me. Clemmy became the bridge between us. One afternoon, my phone buzzed with a photo Clemmy holding a sprig of mistletoe, her grin wide and gap-toothed. From Captain Hart, the message read. "She says it's for good luck." I laughed out loud in the middle of the bookstore. I sent back a photo of the mistletoe hanging in my window. It went on like that, texts turning into calls, calls turning into quick meetups. Garrett would bring Clemmy to the bookstore sometimes, pretending to browse, while she ran straight to me with a new drawing or a story about school. One evening, after Clemmy had spent an hour helping me rearrange the children's section, mostly by stacking books into castles, Garrett suggested coffee. "Just us," he said quietly, while Clemmy was distracted by a picture book. "If you're free." I was. We met at a small cafe down the street from my apartment. No snow that night, just clear stars and biting cold. We sat by the window, steam rising from our mugs. We talked about nothing and everything. Books I loved. Wood projects he was working on, mostly custom shelves for local shops. How Clemmy was obsessed with learning to skate but kept falling on her butt. "I'm not great at this," he admitted at one point, stirring his coffee slowly. The whole talking thing. After Rachel, I kind of forgot how. I nodded. "Me too. After everything." We didn't push for details then. We just sat in the quiet, and for once it didn't feel heavy. A few weeks later, on a night when the snow had turned to rain, Garrett invited me over for dinner. Clemmy answered the door in her pajamas, jumping into my arms like we'd known each other forever. "We made pasta," she announced. Daddy didn't burn it this time. Garrett appeared in the kitchen doorway, apron tied around his waist, a smear of sauce on his cheek. "She's exaggerating," he said. "Mostly." Dinner was simple spaghetti with meatballs, garlic bread, salad. Clemmy dominated the conversation, telling us about her new best friend at school who had a pet hamster named Pickles. After we ate, Clemmy dragged me to her room to show me her coloring books. We sat on the floor, crayons scattered everywhere, while she created a masterpiece of a rainbow unicorn. Garrett poked his head in after a while. Bedtime kiddo. Clemmy groaned, but hugged me goodnight. "See you soon," she asked. "See you soon," I promised. Once she was tucked in Garrett and I moved to the living room. The house was small, but cozy wooden floors he'd probably refinished himself, shelves lined with books and photos. One caught my eye, a younger Garrett smiling wide with a woman who had Clemmy's curls and eyes. "Rachel," he noticed me looking. "That was our wedding day," he said quietly. I didn't know what to say. He sat on the couch across from me, rubbing his hands together like he was gathering courage. "I think it's time," he said, finally. He stood and went to a drawer in the side table, pulling out a wooden box. It was simple, polished, smooth, his work, I realized. He sat beside me and opened it. Inside were letters, dozens of them, folded neatly, envelopes unmarked. "I started writing them after she died," he explained. "To her, to myself. Some nights 2 or 3, just to get through." His voice was steady, but his hands trembled a little as he sifted through them. He pulled one out, the most recent dated just a week ago, and handed it to me. "Read it," he said softly. "If you want." I unfolded it carefully. "Dear Rachel, I met someone. She makes quiet feel warm again. She laughs at Clemmy's stories like they're the best thing she's ever heard. I think you'd like her. I'm scared, but I'm trying. Love, Garrett." My eyes stung. I looked up at him. He was watching me, vulnerable, in a way that made my heart twist. "You don't have to say anything," he whispered. But I did. "I'm scared too," I admitted. "After my ex, he left because I can't have kids." Said it like it was a deal breaker, like I was broken. Garrett's jaw tightened. "You're not broken," he said firmly. I reached out and took his hand. It was the first time we'd touched like that. Not a hug from Clemmy, not a brush of fingers. Intentional. Real. His fingers laced with mine, warm and steady. "I know what it's like to feel like you're missing pieces," he said. "But with you, I don't feel like I'm trying to fill a void. I just feel like there's room again." I squeezed his hand. We sat like that for a long time. Hands intertwined, the rain tapping against the window. No promises, no labels. Just two people who had been shattered, sitting in the quiet, realizing that maybe together we weren't quite so fractured anymore. We were enough. By March, the snow had melted into muddy puddles along the sidewalks, and the first green shoots pushed through the earth in the park across from my apartment. The world felt new, crisp mornings, bird song at dawn, the kind of renewal that made you believe in second chances even if you weren't quite ready to claim one. Garrett and I didn't move in together. We didn't label what we had. But our lives wove together in small, steady ways that felt more real than any grand gesture ever could. Morning started with him dropping off Clemmy at the bookstore on his way to a job site. She'd burst through the door, backpack swinging, and hand me a drawing or a flower she'd picked from someone's yard. Garrett would linger just long enough to say hello, his hand brushing mine as he passed a warm bagel or a thermos of coffee. "Clemmy says it tastes better when you smile first," he'd say, with that quiet grin. I'd smile, every time. Evenings were quieter. Sometimes I'd stop by their house after work, helping Clemmy with homework or reading her a chapter from her favorite book about magical rabbits. Garrett would cook simple things like stir-fry or tacos, and we'd eat at the kitchen table, Clemmy chattering between us. One night, after Clemmy had fallen asleep on the couch, mid-story, Garrett walked me to the door. He paused in the hallway, his hand on the knob. "You know," he said softly, "I don't know where we're going." I looked up at him. "Neither do I." But for the first time, he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "I want to keep walking." I nodded. That was enough. A week later, Clemmy showed up at the bookstore with a new drawing clutched in her fist. She thrust it at me like it was a secret treasure. "This is for you," she said, bouncing on her toes. I unfolded it carefully. It was a house, simple lines, a triangle roof, windows with curtains. 3 stick figures stood in front, a tall one with dark hair, a small one with curls, and another with long blonde lines for hair. At the bottom, in wobbly letters, "This is our house, even if it's not real yet." My breath caught. Clemmy watched me, her eyes wide. "Do you like it?" I knelt down to her level. "I love it, Clemmy. It's perfect." She hugged me tight, then skipped off to the children's section. That night I taped the drawing to my fridge right next to a grocery list Garrett had scribbled the last time he'd been over. His handwriting, neat, deliberate, sat beside Clemmy's crayon scrawl. It looked right there. We didn't talk about the future. We didn't need to. The small things said enough. His sweater left on my couch after a movie night, my favorite tea stocked in his cupboard, Clemmy's toys migrating to my living room shelf. One afternoon, I found myself back at Evergreen Lounge. I hadn't planned it. I was walking past on my lunch break and something pulled me inside. The holiday decorations were gone, replaced by simple spring flowers in vases, but the golden light was the same. The hostess recognized me. "Table for one," I shook my head. "Just browsing memories." She smiled and let me wander. I walked past my old table, the one where I'd sat alone, that Christmas Eve napkin crumpled in my lap, heart heavy as lead. I paused there, expecting the ache to return. It didn't. The chair was empty now, waiting for someone else's story. I kept walking to the table near the back where Garrett and Clemmy had been sitting, where we'd shared grilled cheese and laughter and a slice of chocolate cake. I sat down uninvited just for a moment. The waiter, the same one from that night, approached with a menu. Back again, he asked kindly. I nodded. "Yeah, things are different now." He smiled like he understood. "Good different. The best kind." I ordered a coffee to go, but I lingered a little longer watching the lunchtime crowd. Couples, friends, a mother with her toddler. No one looked as lost as I had felt that night. When I stepped outside, the air was warmer spring, teasing the edges of winter. I tucked the coffee cup into my hand and walked home, Clemmy's drawing waiting on the fridge. I wasn't fixed. I knew that. The scars from my ex, from the life I'd thought I'd have, didn't vanish overnight. There were still mornings when I woke up and felt the weight of what I couldn't give. Still nights when loneliness whispered in the dark. But I was no longer broken. I had people who saw me not as damaged goods, but as someone worth showing up for. Garrett with his quiet strength and letters to the past. Clemmy with her hugs and drawings and unwavering belief that love fixed everything. They didn't complete me. They just reminded me that I was already whole. And that was enough.